so much for clicking on this video today. It really means a lot to me, and I really appreciate all the support that I've been getting on my last video. Today, I have planned yet another bedtime story ASMR video for you. So, whether you're trying to fall asleep or just want something to listen to in the background, please sit back and relax while I tell you the story of a young girl named Isla. Isla had never left her island. She had lived there her whole life in a cottage of whitewashed stone, perched above a bay where the sea touched the sky with deep, sleepy fingers. Her parents grew herbs and caught fish. Her younger brother wove baskets, and her grandmother, when she wasn't dozing away in a sunlit chair, made buttons out of seashells. Life was quiet. The breeze was always soft. The gulls called overhead like an old friend. But Isla's heart wasn't quiet. She would stand on the cliff paths in the early morning, barefoot with salt clinging to her hair, and she would watch the sea stretch out like a map that she couldn't read. Trade ships passed by only twice a season. They came with barrels of grain and spools of silk and stories that she wasn't meant to hear. Isla would ask questions to the sailors, always more than she should. Where does the sun set when you're still sailing? Have you ever seen the floating cities? Is the desert real, or is it just a story they tell to children? The sailors would always smile. Some answered, some didn't. But every time they left, she felt a little bit more restless. It wasn't that she disliked home. She loved her family. She loved the way her grandmother's humming seemed to keep the house from ever falling asleep entirely. She loved the way her brother made baskets sturdier than anyone else, even though he was still small for his age. But she wanted more. The trouble was, wanting more was expensive. Her family didn't have the coin to put her on a ship, let alone send her off with anything beyond a knapsack and a good luck charm. And so she stayed. She learned to sail in the harbor, just little boats. She helped her mother with the herbs, delivered bundles to neighbors, and stirred sea salt into butter. And she waited, not bitterly, just patiently. Until, one summer, everything would change. The storm came in the night, wind lashing the trees sideways, waves flooding the docks, the air so thick with salt and thunder that it hurt at times to breathe. They lost 3 boats in the storm. But the day after, while helping clean up the mess, Isla found a silver case lodged in the rocks near the eastern cove. She thought that it was just a bit of broken cargo, until her father opened it and found the contents dry and untouched. Inside it were papers, trade papers, ownership seals, and a merchant's bond that had gone missing in the storm. The contents of the case were enough to pay for the repairs of the village boats and more, leaving her family with far more than they'd ever had. Her father turned to Isla and quietly said, "You've given us enough, darling. Maybe now it's your time to see the world." And that was how it all began. She packed light, just a woven satchel, a small coin purse, her grandmother's this one, heading north towards the port cities, Isla climbed aboard. She didn't cry when the island shrank behind her. She thought that she would, but instead, she watched it grow smaller and smaller until it was just a green and gold smudge on the blue. And she whispered to herself, "I'll come back." The ship was called the Sighing Seagull. Its captain, a woman named Rhea, had eyes like sharp glass and a voice like sand over stone. She didn't say much to Isla at first, but when Isla climbed the rigging without being asked to, and tied a knot cleaner than any other deckhand, Rhea gave her a single nod. From then on, she was one of the crew. There was a boy her age named Tobin, who'd been aboard since he was a child. He could cook over a swinging stove and carve wind chimes out of driftwood. There was also Cal, an older sailor with the sea tattoos down his arms, and stories that sounded like lies, but probably weren't. She learned fast. She learned to listen to the wind, not just its sound, but its feel, the way it shifted before a storm. She learned to sleep through creaking wood and cold sprays, and how to barter in a port without getting cheated. She stood once on the bow during a night crossing, as stars spread above like shattered glass, and thought, "This is what I've been waiting for." Not just escape, not just freedom for freedom's sake, but the rhythm of the sails, the laughter of strangers, and the wide, wild not knowing of what's ahead. They stopped in the city of Navarros, where the market stretched across bridges and music seemingly never stopped. Isla tasted sugared fish and watched silk dancers in the squares. In a coastal town called Gramel, she helped rescue a beached orca calf, pushing it with 5 others until the tide swept it back home. At sea, they encountered a ghost ship once. Not real ghost, of course. Just an abandoned hull floating too still, too silent. Rhea steered around it, not saying a word. These oddities were common out at sea. They sailed through fog banks and past cliffs that sang when the wind blew right. They traded barrels of salted almonds for spice, and crates of pepper root for mirrors carved with moon shapes. Isla wrote letters that she couldn't send, folding them into the lining of her satchel. Words like, "I saw a sea turtle larger than our garden," or "I'm learning how to read the stars." She wasn't running. She was discovering. One evening, months after she'd left the island behind, Rhea found Isla alone on the deck. "You've done well," she said. "You'll think you'll stay aboard for a little while." Isla looked out to the sea, where another island waited on the horizon, new and unfamiliar, and she smiled. "For a while," she replied. The ship rocked gently beneath their feet, and somewhere below, someone started to sing an old tune about waves and wandering. The stars blinked overhead, and Isla finally didn't feel that she was missing anything. She was exactly where she was meant to be, sailing forward into the quiet unknown. They followed the trade winds north and west to port cities where the air smelled like cinnamon and smoke. She helped lift crates in the rain, stitch sails by lantern light, and once danced until dawn in a harbor town where no one knew her name. She had adventures, She watched lightning strike the sea so close to her that it felt like it split the sky in two. She tasted fruits that shimmered, caught fireflies the size of coins, and bartered for a book that she couldn't even read, just because the pages felt that they held secrets. And all of it was wonderful. But over time, a quiet ache began to grow inside of her. It started small, just a thought, late at night in her hammock, when the waves rocked her gently to sleep. A wondering, a remembering. She thought of her brother's quiet laugh, of the sound of the wind in the grass by the cliffs, of the scent of her grandmother's peppered tea, and the way the sea looked from her own kitchen window, blue, gray, and familiar. She wasn't lonely exactly. She was surrounded with friends and crewmates who felt like her chosen family. But some part of her missed belonging. Not just being welcome, but being known. So, one early morning, while the ship rested in a quiet port, Isla stood barefoot on the dock and looked out to the east. Beyond that direction, past the edge of her maps and memory, was home. Rhea came to stand beside her. Thinking of leaving us? She asked playfully. Isla hesitated. I'm thinking of returning, she replied. The captain nodded. It's a good thing to go, and it's a good thing to come back, said the captain. And so, with her satchel a little bit heavier than when she first departed on her journey, now filled with keepsakes and drawings and one wrinkled and half-finished letter that she wrote to her brother, Isla stepped on to a different ship, a smaller one, a slower one, but bound for the windward shores that she called home. The journey took weeks. The seas were much calmer than she remembered, or maybe she was just steadier. She spent the days helping the cook and mending old fishing nets, and in the evenings, she sat on the deck with a journal in her lap, writing down everything that she could remember. Not just the sights that she'd seen, but the feelings of it all. Like how the wind smelled different in each place, how people laughed in different rhythms, how no matter where she went, the stars always followed her. And one quiet afternoon, the island came into view. It looked exactly the same, yet entirely new. The cliffs still cradled the bay. The village roofs still shone with salt white tile. The path up to her house still curved the same way. But it all felt different now, because she was different. Her brother was taller, her grandmother slower to rise. But the moment she stepped through the garden gate, her mother turned and saw her, and in that moment, nothing else in the world mattered. No stories needed explaining. They just held each other, and that was enough. That night, Isla slept in her own bed, under the old quilts, and the window cracked open just enough to let in some sound of the waves. The sea was still out there, calling softly. And perhaps she'd go again someday. But for now, her story was here, in the smell of the sea time, in her brother's stories, in the way her father winked as if to say, I told you you'd make it. And Isla, who had always dreamed of leaving, finally come home. Not because the world wasn't wide and wonderful, but because there is no substitute for a place that knows the shape of your heart. And as she drifted to sleep, with the moon rising over the bay, she thought, you can love the world and still come home to it. And so she did. The end. Thank you so much for joining me in this video today. I really hope that you enjoyed this story. In the past, I typically go into these videos with a loose idea of the story and make some of it up as I go. But in this case, I wrote this story out entirely beforehand. And so, if it has a different feel to it, then that's why. So, let me know in the comments if you prefer the old way or if you liked it written out like it was in this video, or if it didn't make a difference to you. I'd love to hear your feedback. But thank you again. Please leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. And I hope to see